Guys, this latest chapter of My Hero Academia was ridiculous, insane, jaw-dropping, and downright out of pocket. There is so much to talk about with this one, to speculate about, so much corroboration to our prior sentiment and theories that, yeah, this is gonna be a loaded one. So in the previous one, we had Deku catapulting through the roof of a skyscraper by way of the Fajin quirk and gripping onto the arm of Lady Nagant. And with this, he felt as though his victory was a definite, but she was not done fighting, as she would repel him elsewhere and continue to fire off at him. And in the midst of this barrage of bullets, we would have Lady Nagant speaking to Deku in regards to her past, in regards to the falsehoods of today's hero society, or that which was previously established and long-standing. As we know, Lady Nagant was an agent of the Public Safety Commission, and that was a hired gun in pretty much the literal sense. She was made to terminate all outstanding threats to heroic society, whether they be villains or otherwise. She was slaughtering terrorists when they were only in the planning stages, before they had done anything wrong truly. Taking out unsavory heroes who would reflect poorly on heroic society as a whole. She was doing any and everything that they asked her to do. And the reason she was willing to obey to do all of this is because she understood the necessity of it for the sake of their establishment continuing on and perpetuating in the way that it has, maintaining the peace, quote unquote. Because where there is light, there must be darkness to follow. But over time, it became too much for her. The blood that was on her hands, the fragility of the system that they were in, it just bothered her so thoroughly that she was pushed to a state of depravity, of questioning what it was that she was doing, if there was any point to it all. So one day, when brought in by the former leader of the Public Safety Commission and instructed to take out a couple of heroes once more, she would question her orders for the first time, it would seem. And this sort of insubordination, this sort of questioning wasn't something that the commissioner was familiar with and would question himself, attempting to remind her that this isn't something that she can simply walk away from. And in the midst of this conversation, she killed him. She took him out. I don't know what she thought that this would achieve, because he essentially is just a stand-in. There's always going to be someone else who's going to rise up in that position. But she was pushed to this point. This is the extent to which she has been broken down and torn apart. But of course, this information was not allowed to surface. This was not allowed to be perpetuated to the populace. People could not find out about this, because if they did, then it would cause further questioning and an uprooting of, once again, the established that they so herald and cherish. And so to Deku, Lady Nagant would convey that if they bring back heroic society as it once was, then history is bound to repeat itself. And where there will be light, there will be heroes saving the day again. There will be those who have to pick up the slack and be torn apart for it. It's not as if this perfect society of theirs has suddenly been uprooted and broken apart. No, it has been fragile, it has been weak, it has been degrading over time. And so at the very least, she felt as though she would be able to find solace in the fact that in a world ruled by all for one, it would at least be clear what was actually going on. There wouldn't be a shroud of deception and lies. And the fact that she is willing to settle for transparency just shows how broken this character is, how far she has been pushed. But to interrupt this monologue of hers, Deku would use his quirk, Black Whip, in a new form in the way of pinpoint focus. This being a extremely long-range projectile of a single tendril, very focused and poignant, as he would latch onto the building behind her after scanning her trajectory by way of his Danger Sense quirk. And so although Deku has yet to perfect his simultaneous process technique, he is pretty good at using multiple quirks in tandem at this point. He has yet to reach the apex, but this is still really impressive. And in recognizing that Deku was not giving up, in recognizing that this assault was not going to stop and that his speed was only increasing, Lady Nagant would be pushed to the edge and would decide to aim her weapon at Chisaki, who Deku would actually recognize. And speaking of Chisaki, with this latest chapter, we would open up to him speaking to Lady Nagant as she picked up her equipment and suit back from the prison's inventory. He would tell her that he knows who Deku is, that he's the one who foiled his plans oh so long ago and landed him in prison to begin with. that he is yet another victim of hero syndrome. And here, we get to see that Chisaki hasn't entirely lost his mind. He is, of course, a bit deranged, as I believe he was previously even when he wasn't incarcerated, but here it is made expressly clear that he does have some sense, that he does have the capacity for a proper conversation. It's just that he is hyper fixated on returning to the boss right now. And in that way, Lady Nagant would figure that it was meant to be, that he'll be useful in identifying the target, which I suppose he was. And Lady Nagant would be quick to stop him and say that I'm not going to be handling any of your prior grudges, that's not my business. But he wasn't interested in that at all. He doesn't want any sort of revenge, and this was made clear here. This shows that he's not intent on being a villain anymore. He doesn't want to do anything anymore in that regard. He just wants to go back to the boss. He's lost everything, and the boss is all that he has, so please just let him see the boss. That's all he wanted. And in this, Lady Nagant will look to him with a bit of pity. She would look to him as someone broken by this society in the same way that she was, and take pity on him. But getting back to the current day, we would see the arm of Lady Nagant become gnarled and wretched, disgusting, now being rather swollen and unsightly, as Chisaki would again beg her to let him see the boss. He's done his part, he's upheld his end of the bargain, he just wants to see the boss. Meanwhile, she had her weapon aimed at him and ready to go. And in pushing her arms to its utmost limitations in this way, Lady Nagant would fear that potentially her gun may jam in this event, but it was worth the risk. She had to do it at this point. As she would additionally state that she hates heroic education the most, which is pretty funny considering this point in the story is one where we are not seeing the academia aspect of My Hero Academia at all. We are just here in the streets. And in knowing that Deku was raised by this heroic institution in the way that that was his tutelage, she was able to predict and expect that he would not allow a single person to be harmed on his watch, no matter what sort of person that they happen to be. And so she would fire off her shot, and in the event that Deku were to overthink the scenario, she would have an opportunity to take him down. And with this, Deku would shift his trajectory and leap into action without any hesitation. And this motion was one using the quirk of the third possessor, which is known as Fajin. A quirk that we have thoroughly explained in a video prior, but here it would be explained as well as a repetition of motions that would allow Deku to store and then release kinetic energy. And here we receive a sort of signifier of his use of Fajin, which seems to be predominantly in his legs. He would use Fajin as a defense mechanism against preceding shots, as well as use One for All at 45%, his upper threshold, his limitation at this point. Not to mention using centrifugal force. And here it's denoted as something that everyone in our generation knows. I promise you, if I go to anyone in my age range, they're not gonna know what that is. Pretty much it's the way a washing machine may work with that center cone in it, if that's the sort of washing machine you're familiar with. And in this, Deku's intention was to mimic All Might once more, something that he's moved away from, but he would use it in this instance and become faster than a speeding bullet, achieving a pseudo 100% One for All. And so in that, I'ma need a whole lot of apologies. All the people who are calling Plot Armor crazy for saying that Deku is getting a speed quirk, I'ma need the apologies. I have the receipts. I'ma need the apologies because this man is not only he's faster than a bullet. Yes, he's faster than a bullet coming from Lady Nagant, the fastest shooter in the game. Not to mention, you can see the raindrops, the literal raindrops that are still in the process of falling. He was able to reach this point and save Chisaki before they could hit the ground. So yes, it's not a speed quirk in the sense that it is exclusively that, because Fajin can be used in several ways, but as we predicted, once more, this is something that can be applied in that way, and Deku is faster than he ever has been. He's always been a fast character, he's always been a speedy character. From the moment he got full cowl, he has been a fast character, but now, he is just unbelievably fast. And Lady Nagant, she couldn't believe her eyes. I mean, Not only is he fast, but he shifted his trajectory that quickly. Even if he is this fast, the fact that there was no hesitation, there was no thought process, she intended to take him off guard. In the event that he began to think about the situation and overanalyze, she was going to capitalize. But this man, Deku, as we know, as fans of this series since the very beginning, we know that Deku, when it comes to saving people, does not hesitate. He doesn't think. His body just moves, and this is a perfect example of that. And he would additionally express to Chisaki that he wasn't done with him, as he would head off right back to Lady Nagant to finish this up. And in this conflict, the third possessor was overseeing the battle. He was analyzing Deku's movements and thought process here, which was pretty impressive. This is again the first time that Deku has used this quirk, and he recognized that he wasn't able to fully utilize all these quirks at the same time. However, he would consolidate to just a couple of quirks: Black Whip, Fajin, and of course the base power of One for All. And this was the moment that Lady Nagant knew she messed up. She was saying, alright, I gotta get out of here. It's time to fall back. Because again, time is of the essence. We know that the top 3 heroes are on their way. She only had so much time to handle this Deku situation and apprehend him. And furthermore, he is now taking the initiative and getting the upper hand on her on top of that. She has surpassed her limitations. But Deku here had another leg's worth of Fajin. And we questioned how exactly this power would be stockpiled in the way of storage, and it seems as though we can expect a limb's worth, a leg's worth of Fajin or an arm's worth of Fajin, something like that. And with this, Deku would just overkill and use a pseudo 100% Manchester Smash. And once again, this whole pseudo 100%, this is something that we talked about. This is something that we expected, as with Fajin being as powerful as it is, can offset the missing percentile of Deku's power. Which is to say that when he does achieve 100%, he will be able to go beyond, truly beyond. And I guess that's the whole thing, plus Ultra and what have you. But to know that he could probably go like 200% or something is just mind-blowing. But yeah, in doing this, he would just obliterate Lady Nagant's rifle arm. It is just terrible. It's torn apart. It looks as though her arm is gonna fall off. And I had to question, like, Deku, you really did that? It doesn't seem becoming of him. It doesn't seem as though something that he would do. It's kind of reminiscent of a Batman in the way that, alright, I'm not gonna kill you. Heroes don't kill, but I'm gonna break every bone in your body and you're gonna have no health insurance to cover it. And again, Lady Nagant would think to herself that this kid, he didn't hesitate at all. He recognized Chisaki, and she knows that there is a history between them. But he didn't care. He didn't stop at all. It didn't stop him from going to his rescue. He didn't think about if he should do it or not. And so again, she would recall the instance in which she was recruited by the Public Safety Commission and wonder when it was that those words made her sick. Remember when it was that she lost her way as a hero. And listen, this man Deku is just terrible. He would hold on to her, he would save her as she was falling, and grip onto the arm that he just destroyed and mangled. I know that must hurt. And he had to hold her in this way because her airwalk was acting up. It was no longer keeping her aloft. And now with a softer tone, Deku would speak to her and say that the bullet that she fired at Chisaki, the trajectory was way off. And once again, this is an incredibly accurate sniper. She is the best in the business. For her to miss, it's not an accident. And furthermore, if she were truly an ally of All for One's, she would have taken Deku out with that preceding shot. When his back was turned, she would have ended him. But she didn't. And furthermore, he would express that because she understands how terrible this heroic society can be, she would be the best person to fix it. She would be the one to know where to shine a light and handle the darkness of this society. He would tell her that she still has a chance to be redeemed, that she still has the heart of a hero, that she should fight alongside them and make this world a better place to live in. And as he held onto her hand, she would look up at it and recognize that this was the arm of his that was damaged in this fight. And so they are both holding on to each other with these damaged limbs. And it touched her. She was truly at a loss for words and would just smile up at him and would begin to say something as she smiled brightly at him. But just then, her face would begin to split apart in a way familiar to us, in a way that we have seen from Shigaraki during the war arc. as Deku would then look to her wide-eyed as a bright light would begin to shine on his face, as we would then have a maniacal laughter erupt from All For One, that hearts can be so easily swayed, which is why he decided to prepare for her potential failure, as boom! An explosion would go off. And much to Deku's horror, as he would scream the name Lady Nagant, he would say that in the end, all she ever was a tool to be used by others. And furthermore, that if she's to curse anyone, if she's to blame anyone, that she should blame the ever useful quirk that she was blessed with. And now Deku was just screaming in horror as the feathers of Hawks would firstly appear, with Hawks then coming to her rescue after the fact. Now holding on to her now scorched body in the middle of the air, telling her not to die on him. And that was the chapter. Oh my goodness, this chapter is just, I don't even know what to say. There is just so much going on here. There is so much to speculate about and to cover. Man, I mean, okay, we were right again. I know I say this a lot. We just happen to be right a lot. And this is one of those things that I was really hoping I wouldn't be right about in this way, at least. All For One is so evil. It's not even comparable to anyone else in the series. He is the baddest of the bad. And if you have seen our UA Trader video, you know exactly what I am talking about. This is why you gotta be watching our videos that are outside of the chapters, because we go through this stuff. So previously we theorized that All For One, the true danger of this man, is that he is within so many people at this point. His quirk, the passage of his quirk, it's not as if it is just purely a one-to-one transfer. It is just providence. No, there is a aspect of himself that he adds into that. He is a part of these quirks. Once he takes them, they are his then. And then when he bestows them onto others, a part of him is beseeched onto them as well. And so when he said that he was providing a bit of insurance onto his pact with Lady Nagant, that was him giving her a quirk with a bit of himself, his own essence within it. And this isn't up for debate any longer. This is not in question. If you look here, this isn't All For One elsewhere regarding this situation. This isn't him sensing that Lady Nagant betrayed him. This isn't even him observing that Lady Nagant betrayed him, because once again, I mean, the guy is blind. What we see, he is inside of her mouth. It is incredibly subtle. You wouldn't notice it if you weren't looking as hard as we do. But here, the face of All For One is surrounded by the teeth of Lady Nagant. And when it comes to a charred body, teeth usually remain intact, and that is how you identify people. So despite Lady Nagant now being scorched, her teeth remain, and we can see them surrounding All For One. Again, this is something that has perpetuated society for generations at this point. All For One is very, very old. He is centuries old, and he has been passing quirks onto people for centuries. And if you remember, the notion to the past wielders of One For All was that quirks are similar to organs, that sometimes when you pass on an organ, people have experienced the phenomenon of possessing other people's memories from that organ transplant. We have discussed the danger of the quirk singularity doomsday theory on a multitude of occasions, but here we have further corroboration. I can definitively say that All For One is a part of the singularity in a way that we would have never been able to concretely discern. All For One is one of the very few people who was willing to corroborate the sentiments of Dr. Garaki and believe in his theory, as he is actually a part of it. And perhaps one might argue that maybe he gave Lady Nagant a secondary quirk, a volatile quirk that would blow her up or something of the sort. But I don't believe that is the case at all. I think it's simply that her body cannot handle the emergence of All For One. We saw her face split in the same way as Shigaraki, and Shigaraki can handle it because he was made to handle it. He was raised to mentally withstand that sort of burden, as well as physically withstand that sort of burden. Lady Nagant was not prepared for this in the slightest. And furthermore, if you're wondering why All For One has a breathing mask here and he didn't have that with Shigaraki, it's because of the point of passage. He gave Lady Nagant this power. He gave her airwalk when he had this on his face, when he was at this point. The point of passage for Shigaraki, the point in which he provided his original quirk, was prior to his incarceration, and so he wouldn't have this. And to an extent, this is all classic All For One, to be truly honest with you. He doesn't just beat his enemies down. He doesn't just apprehend them. He doesn't just outright win against them. He breaks them. He wants to mentally tax them. When he fought against All Might, he didn't just fight him straight up. He spoke of Shimura Nana. He spoke of the fact that Shigaraki is Shimura Nana's grandson. And he now knows, he now has a grasp of the sort of person that Deku is. And with this, how does Deku smile again? How does Deku manage to ever smile again? We have not seen this guy smile in so long, and I don't expect it to come anytime soon after this happens. I mean, this is traumatic to a new level. And at that, I'll tell you right now, it is over for Lady Nagant. She is done. The best that I can imagine will come from her is a bit of deposition into All For One's position or something in that regard. Maybe her final words will be able to tip them off to a sort of avenue for them to explore. But in regards to her actually joining the team and recovering from this, it's not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. She has been torn asunder and her arm is destroyed. She is no use to them, which is incredibly unfortunate because this is one of the best villains to date, and to have her to really only last for a couple of chapters is really, really sad. However, in her absence, I imagine we'll have further inquiry in regards to Chisaki. Again, we have expected him to reunite with Deku, and Deku now knows where he is and who he is, and told him that he's not done with him, so yeah, it's coming. Beyond that, this is our first time seeing Hawks back in action since his battle against Dabi. We have seen him with the other pro heroes, we have seen him with Endeavor and Beginus, but we've never actually seen him in contact with an enemy force. We have never seen his feathers reappear, but now he is once again flying. It doesn't seem as though he has all his feathers just yet, but he is on his recovery path for sure. This was an incredible chapter, and so I hope you all were able to enjoy it and our subsequent coverage of it as well. If you did, be sure to subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at PlotArmorYT. We've been trying our best to give back to you guys as much as possible, especially over on Twitter. Beyond this big giveaway, we have been giving away singular volumes of manga and the latest volumes of My Hero Academia and what have you. We have been engaging with you guys and having conversations, and so we are really, really appreciative of all of you guys coming through and supporting the Plot Army. Really and truly, it means a whole lot. And if you don't already know, nobody does it like we do, because when it comes to bringing you some of the best My Hero Academia content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I'm Celeste Botaku. Thank you all so much for watching and an awesome day. I love you.